For centuries, humanity has looked up at the moon with wonder, dreaming of the day we would finally set foot on its cratered surface. That day, according to history, came on July 20, 1969, when NASA's Apollo 11 mission made history, broadcasting the first human steps on the moon to millions around the world. It was a defining moment, not just for the United States, but for all of humankind. Neil Armstrong's famous words, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind," echoed across televisions, marking the dawn of a new era in space exploration. But what if it was all a lie? What if the footage that captivated the world wasn't filmed on the surface of the moon, but on a secret soundstage somewhere on Earth? What if the greatest achievement in human history was nothing more than a carefully orchestrated hoax designed to deceive the masses and win the space race against the Soviet Union? For decades, conspiracy theorists have claimed that the Apollo moon landings, especially Apollo 11, never actually happened. Instead, they argue, NASA staged the entire event, using Hollywood-style special effects, hidden government facilities, and a web of deception to trick the world. But why would they do such a thing? And is there any real evidence to support this theory? The Cold War, NASA, and the desperate need to win. To understand why NASA might have faked the moon landing, we need to go back to the height of the Cold War. The United States and the Soviet Union were locked in a fierce battle for global dominance, and nowhere was this competition more intense than in space. The Soviets had already shocked the world by launching Sputnik 1, the first artificial satellite, in 1957. Then, in 1961, they took an even greater leap when cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin became the first human to orbit the Earth. The United States was falling behind, and the pressure to prove their superiority was immense. In 1962, President John F. Kennedy made a bold declaration: "We choose to go to the moon." It was a promise to the American people that the US would not only catch up but surpass the Soviets by landing a man on the moon before the end of the decade. But what if NASA realized it was impossible? Some theorists claim that NASA lacked the technology to safely land humans on the moon and return them to Earth. Instead of admitting defeat, they allegedly faked the moon landing to ensure the US would claim victory over the Soviet Union, without ever having to leave Earth's orbit. That evidence that suggests it was all a hoax. Supporters of the moon landing hoax theory point to a variety of strange anomalies in the Apollo 11 footage and photographs. Could these inconsistencies be proof that the entire event was staged? 1. The waving flag. One of the most famous arguments is the waving American flag seen in the moon landing footage. With no atmosphere on the moon, there is no wind to make a flag ripple. So why does the flag appear to move? NASA's explanation is that the flag was wrinkled from being tightly packed and moved due to the astronauts twisting the pole into the lunar surface. But skeptics argue that it looks suspiciously like a breeze, something only possible on Earth. 2. The shadows that don't line up. Many theorists point out that the shadows in the moon landing images appear inconsistent, as if they were created using artificial lighting rather than sunlight. Some objects cast long shadows in one direction, while others seem to have shadows going in different angles, suggesting the use of multiple light sources, like on a movie set. 3. No stars in the sky. In all the photos taken from the moon's surface, the sky is completely black, without a single star visible. Given that space is filled with stars, wouldn't they appear in the background? NASA claims that the camera exposure settings, designed for the bright lunar surface, washed out the distant stars. But conspiracy theorists argue that this was a mistake made by whoever staged the footage, forgetting to include stars in their artificial set. 4. The strange footprints. The Apollo astronauts' boots left incredibly sharp, well-defined footprints in the lunar dust. But scientists say that such crisp prints would require moisture, something that shouldn't exist in the moon's dry environment. Could this be evidence that the footage was filmed on Earth, possibly in a desert or controlled studio setting? 5. The Van Allen radiation belts. One of the biggest arguments against the moon landings is the Van Allen radiation belts, two massive regions of charged particles surrounding Earth. Some scientists believe that any human passing through these belts would have been exposed to deadly radiation, making a trip to the moon impossible with 1960s technology. NASA insists that the Apollo spacecraft passed through the belts quickly enough that the astronauts weren't harmed. But some theorists believe this was yet another scientific hurdle that NASA couldn't overcome, leading them to fake the entire mission instead. Did Stanley Kubrick help fake the moon landing? One of the most infamous claims surrounding the moon landing hoax involves none other than legendary filmmaker Stanley Kubrick, the director behind 2001, A Space Odyssey. Some theorists believe that Kubrick, known for his groundbreaking use of special effects, was secretly hired by the US government to direct the fake moon landing. His 1968 film 2001, A Space Odyssey proved that Hollywood had the technology to simulate space travel convincingly, so why wouldn't NASA have sought his expertise? Adding to the mystery, Kubrick's 1980 film The Shining is said to contain hidden confessions about his involvement. The movie's young character, Danny, is seen wearing a sweater with Apollo 11 on it, and certain cryptic lines and visual cues have been interpreted as Kubrick's subtle way of admitting he helped fake the moon landing. Why would NASA keep the truth hidden? If the moon landing was faked, why hasn't anyone come forward to expose the lie? Conspiracy theorists argue that the US government has gone to extreme lengths to silence whistleblowers. Some claim that key NASA officials and astronauts who knew too much have met mysterious fates. Others believe that revealing the truth now, after decades of teaching the moon landings as fact, would cause irreparable damage to the credibility of science and government institutions. Final thoughts: truth or fiction? The moon landing hoax theory remains one of the most debated conspiracies of all time. While NASA continues to insist that the landings were real, the doubts and unanswered questions refuse to fade away. So, was the Apollo 11 mission a triumph of human achievement, or the greatest deception ever pulled on the world? Was it a giant leap for mankind, or just a giant leap for Hollywood special effects? That's for you to decide.